We're live from Sales HQ. I'm Vince Beasy, your host and the founder of Sales HQ. And my guest today is Bryan Coble. Bryan, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
Before we get into a little bit more about Bryan and his background, a little plug for Sales HQ. We are a co-selling community for high-performing sellers and sales teams. Our first location is here in beautiful Morrisville, North Carolina, which, if you know anything about Morrisville, it's famous for being very close to the airport, which is convenient for a lot of people. But what is a co-selling community? A co-selling community at Sales HQ means sales individuals and sales teams coming together from different companies, different roles, and collaborating and working together in a high energy sales floor. Basically what we're doing is we're replicating what it was like to work on a sales floor like back in the day before the pandemic, and even greater than that. For more information about Sales HQ, you can go to saleshq.co. That's saleshq.co. Well, Bryan, welcome to the show. Glad to have you. We've seen a lot of each other in the last couple of weeks.
We have.
Always here though, right? That's the one consistent.
Absolutely. It's great too. It's a great spot. Highly recommend it.
So tell us a little bit about what you're up to today, and then we'll get a little bit more back into your history and how you got started into sales.
For sure. So what I do today is I work with small to medium businesses to help them grow their sales, simply put. So your go-to-market infrastructure, all come into a small to medium business that's looking to scale up, either hire a sales force, grow their sales team, support it. And I work as their fractional VP of sales and build their sales infrastructure.
You say small to medium. Are these companies in a specific vertical or industry, or is it all over?
More of my history, but typically it's tech startups. So B2B SaaS, tech-enabled services are most of what I work with. However, I have found that a lot of small to medium businesses now, outside industries, construction, staffing, you name it, are all looking to grow their revenue. So surprisingly, have found a lot of interest there for just sales consultancy and providing that for those types of businesses as well.
Yeah, the tech economy is probably would be the go-to, but it's not doing as well as it used to. So it will come back, but it's good to hear you're working with traditional businesses as well. So I often find when I do these interviews that salespeople and sales leaders didn't grow up wanting to potentially be in sales or didn't go to college for sales. So how did you start your career in sales?
That's a good question. Like a lot of folks that kind of fell into it. So I have a degree in political science. So
perfect for sales.
Yeah, perfect for sales. So I, got through college, got my piece of paper. It was a good experience. But a little bit of background. So I worked, my family business growing up was an arborist service. So it was a tree service. The people that come and cut down trees in your yard or along the highway. So my father owned that company, was an entrepreneur, seeing him do that as I grew up. And I obviously worked in the business, did a lot of manual labor. But what I found is kind of when I got into that high school, college realm, it was a lot of just customer relations and understanding how to talk to people and driving value to get more of our services out. So that's really where my sales started.
And plus, you didn't want to be on the tree cutting it down in the hot weather.
Exactly. I did that, but I found that working with the customers was
a lot more enjoyable.
Less dangerous to a degree. So so that's effectively how I got into sales. I was through that small. How
old were you when you started working in your dad's business?
Legally,
we're in North Carolina, so
so I really, when I was a kid, really through 16, 17. It was
some years through college and all that.
Some years through college, and so it was a great just getting your hands dirty work experience. But I found that I learned how to really run a business that way and understand how to grow profits and revenue through that. So did that, and then I actually decided, hey, I want to get into sales. So
did you try anything with political science once you graduated, or no?
No. It was go to law school, and I was done with school.
Okay.
So Yeah, so I ended up taking a outside sales position with a company in Charlotte, and we
Called?
it was called WM Plastics,
Ah,
and what we sold was
plastics.
it was that you would think.
I hope it's got something to do with plastic.
But so if you think about screen printers, the people that print signs in your
Mhm.
in your T-shirts,
Yep.
there's a whole industry out there of it's really small to medium shops that print up T-shirts, promotion, stuff like that. And the plastic ink is what we sold. So I sold all the supplies and gallons.
So you're
of ink.
contributing to the demise of our environment, is what you're saying, Brian.
No,
Is
it was
that
all
true?
environmentally friendly, of course. This is dating back. You know, this is
Yeah,
like
I'm sure
30
back
years
then
ago.
too, right?
But that was a really good baptism of fire
Yeah.
because, I had a territory.
So you went right into closing sales role.
Yeah, well, it was outside sales.
That's all you had, right?
Full stack.
Yeah.
Full stack. They gave me a really crappy company car to
Yeah.
drive around North Carolina and Virginia, and it was get as many meetings with these business owners as you could,
Face to face.
face to face. Lots of door knocking. I would go to the yellow pages and I'd go to town,
Yeah.
find the businesses and go stop by.
And
drop
your
business
database
cards
was
off.
the yellow pages. And your phone was, geez, what did you use as a phone back then? You probably had to go in the office to do that, right?
It was flip phone time.
Was it flip phone?
Yeah,
Okay.
so this is early 2000s.
All right.
So I had a laptop. We did have a CRM.
No one used
At that
it,
point,
yeah.
nobody used it.
Yeah.
So that was it. And I did that for about a year, and I got lucky. Because it was a lot of travel.
Yeah.
I mean, at the time I was no
Yeah,
kids,
so it
not
didn't
married.
matter, yeah.
But I found my cousin's best friend, as most people, find their jobs. They had a startup B2B SaaS company, which at the time SaaS really wasn't a thing. It wasn't really known yet.
Yep.
But they were expanding and looking for some hungry salespeople to get out. And at the time, they could afford me, I guess is the best way to put it. And so I took a job with a company called School Dude at the time. That evolved to Dude Solutions, and now they've been grown and acquired. But that was really effectively how I got into really that B2B SaaS motion, and it was a really good experience because we figured a lot of it out as we went. So this is dating back. We didn't have all the enablement that we have at our fingertips now, and all the training.
So this is early 2000s.
Early 2000s. And so that journey took me through. I started as what would be now known as a sales development rep, just cold calling.
I'm curious, back then, did you call it a sales development rep or did you call it something else?
I think it was my first title was like associate sales rep.
Right. It wasn't as formalized back then.
It wasn't as formalized. And so, just going through that, I was fortunate to have, they had a lot of talent in sales and leadership at that company. So I was able to, be mentored, grow myself as a salesperson, was an individual contributor there for about 7 years.
Okay.
7 years. So, worked my way up to the selling bigger accounts, owned a territory.
And the company grew tremendously during that time.
It did. So in that phase, we were still pretty bootstrapped. Hadn't really taken on any capital yet, and that was a really good just journey to build my sales career. And we did take on some capital. So when that happened, we hired a lot of people. That's really when I stepped into leadership. I got to manage a small team, which was a really good experience because it's manageable. We performed, and then I tell people where things get difficult is when you have a larger team and really have to build your leadership skill set and expand. So as that journey wrapped up, we took on some equity. We grew the business over a period of 4 years. Founders had an exit, so it was a very positive experience. And then I was able to lead a large sales team at that company.
So right place, right time, knew somebody. And it's interesting. Like I often find that in most people's careers, they just walked into a sales role, happenstance or whatever might happen. But also the better opportunities have always, in my opinion, come from referrals. And it sounds like you had a relationship with somebody at Dude Solutions at the time that got you the foot in the door.
I did. And that was great. Now, the sales job I was doing, it was tough. It was knocking on doors.
Sales ain't easy.
It's not easy.
Yeah.
So I put myself out there in the community, like, hey, I'm looking for really the right company.
By the way, I want to go back to when you're doing door to door, because my first, I guess, quote unquote, real sales job was going door to door too. And man, if you've never gone knocking on someone's door, walking in there and asking for business, asking for speak to the owner and all that whole process, you want anxiety. That's anxiety. Man. Like if you can do that and have success with it, you can sell basically anything, because it's real time and in your face, and there's no facial expressions, tone, all those things, and rejection right in front of your face. It's good and rewarding, or it's really bad and you're dejected walking out. But what were your takeaways from that experience of going door to door?
That's how you described it is accurate. I did find that, it was a numbers game, right?
Yeah.
So, I got 20 no's before I got a yes, just for the owner to take a meeting with me. Because I'm walking in, I'm having to come back. But when you had the meeting, the face-to-face was phenomenal, because then you had their attention. My posture, my tone going into those meetings was I wanted to be helpful to them, be a resource for whatever the thing was. So I learned, I learned that it's no matter what, it's a numbers game, but it's also a people game.
Yeah.
And the face-to-face thing, it does produce fruit.
Funniest thing about when I was doing it door to door, I was so used to rejection of going in and say, hey, can I speak to the owner? One time he says, I am the owner. And he goes, what do you want? I'm like, I never got to that point of like actually being able to explain what I was trying to sell. And he stumped me by actually was going to give me a second to explain it. So I failed at that. But then after that, I was like, okay, the next one I go to, there could be a chance that they might be willing to talk to me. So be prepared to be able to sell what you got. So that was.
And they were, these are all, again, small to medium business owners. So they're generally good people.
But they're busy.
But they're busy. Yeah. But they're very busy. They're, they're running their thing. They're trying to manage their employees.
It's a lost art being able to do that like that. That's and now you get religious groups and different people knock on your homes, which is hard as well and difficult, but it's a learning experience for sure versus 100% behind email or digital, right? Anyone can be brave behind an email, but going face to face with somebody is another different challenge, right?
Absolutely.
So, cool. So got you up to Dude Solution, had a great run there. I want to switch now to you're moving into sales leadership. One of the topics that's interesting to me is the concept of coaching versus managing, right? Like a lot of people say, I'm your manager, but nobody wants a manager, right? If you're a sales rep, you want to learn, you want to expand, you want to get better. So explain to me in what it means to be a great coach versus a manager, or managing versus coaching.
So managing versus coaching. So what I found is, as I've kind of gotten into consultancy, I did some consulting specifically for coaching with the company. In between my past two companies, and what's interesting, the data point is, actual focus coaching versus just doing a manager one-on-one where we're looking at your pipeline and we're talking about deals and just give me the quick hits. The coaching piece is really what drives win rate. So there's tons of data out there on, hey, if you can do some focus coaching where it's structured, your team or your rep that you're coaching from a leadership perspective, their win rate will grow because you're developing them. It's not a punitive type conversation. There's movement on it. And so, the difference between, managing is not bad. It's just,
it's part of the job.
I like to define I like to separate out the coaching piece from the managing. And by doing that, my experience has been, when I'm working with somebody in a coaching capacity,
Mhm.
they know 100% what we're doing and how it's valuable to them. And so it's about setting the expectation with the person you're coaching, number one, and then, giving them the resources and, getting them into a comfortable environment of just being helpful.
Yeah.
Right. And then just having that focused time outside of the pipeline review and outside of,
So how
doing the
often
HR
did you
stuff.
schedule the one-on-one coaching with your team?
So depending on the size of the team, it was once every 2 weeks we had a focused coaching session. So there's different ways to do it. There's group coaching.
Yeah.
But the one-on-one coaching is really where it happens. And that's the piece that a lot of companies and management they get busy and they say, hey,
it's the thing you knock off the calendar.
It's like, oh yeah, I got my meeting.
Push it out
with Jill at 7 a.m. Like, oh, we'll do that next week, and it gets pushed out. But for me, really the consistency on that and just doing it consistently, communicating with the my team member on what was happening and what we're working on, that's really where I saw the most growth in management.
And it took me a while to understand that from the salesperson's perspective, the most important meeting that they had with their manager was the coaching, because it was for them to help them to get better. And I found over time, took me a while, that that's the meeting they actually looked forward to, as opposed to the pipeline review or the stuff about just general improvements or evaluation stuff. It was the coaching sessions. And I did my best over time to make sure I always kept those meetings and didn't cancel those meetings, because it was the thing that they appreciated the most that you did for them. And I find that today, that as I think a lot of frontline leaders don't do that enough, or they skip it too much. And I don't think there's enough coaching going on today. What's your thoughts about that?
I would agree. And the data point would be, if you can do coaching consistently, there's data out there. I can get it. But you're looking at 30 to 40% win rate conversion.
Yeah.
Like it drives the numbers because it's the most effective way to do it. But it's the number one thing that managers don't do.
Because it's hard. I mean, you have to put some thought into it, because if you're going to coach, you have to coach to the actual player, to the actual person, right? So what are some of the things you did in the coaching to help people specifically?
Okay, so number one,
focus on, right?
Yeah, so number one, it would be, the setup of it. It did take some communication to set it up correctly, so for the individual to know it's a priority to me, so they can make it a priority for them. So that'd be one. And then within the actual coaching structure, I would often, at the start of them, at the whatever time period it was, I would ask them what they think their biggest weaknesses are, and it would be a conversation. I may have some disagreements, but the point is we would land on that one thing we want to work on. Okay, and so every week we were on the same page at that point. It would be, hey, we were going to work on your time blocking and your prioritization. Okay, we've agreed that that's the thing, that's your growth area. Let's talk about that, and we'll have takeaways, and we can see the ball moving down the field every week on that, and then I could be helpful. And then, or if it was, hey, I want to do meetings better, or I want to, I know my cold calling game or my prospecting game is not the best, so we would focus on that. So to simply put it, we would focus on one thing that they were bought into.
Makes sense. I'm curious, you mentioned alignment. You'd land on a specific things to coach on. How often did the salesperson and you agree on what that person needed to improve on? Meaning, were they self-aware? Did you find people to be self-aware?
Most of the time, yes. I'd say 70% of the time, they were self-aware of the thing that they needed the most help on.
Yeah, and when they're not, you're like, yeah, that's a good topic, but maybe we'll do this one, right?
Yeah, and so the other 30%, then that's a conversation, right?
Yeah.
And then, that's just kind of where you just have to be transparent and truthful and direct, and just say, hey, look, this is what the numbers are showing me this.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
is it really the thing that you want to work on?
What's your thoughts today? You know, I look at sales today and individuals in sales today, kind of like I look at youth sports. When I was playing youth sports, you went out and you played for your rec team, and then you played for your school teams, and you moved from one sport to the next, and you didn't do training in between that for the other sport. Now everything's specialized in sports, right? The kid says he's hockey, he's going to play on a club, and he's going to train year round, and he's got probably his or her own personal coach. And I'm seeing that happen in sales too, where sales contributors, high performers, obviously taking coaching from their leadership, their management, but also hiring specific coaches. What's your thoughts about that? You think that's a good thing? That's a good trend, or?
I think it's a very good trend. And I would agree. I mean, you know, sales is getting, you know, I'd say the SaaS journey, the tech SaaS journey over the past several years has showed us that specialization matters. You know, for career growth, for hitting your revenue goals, and it's about driving focus. But from a professional development standpoint, I think it puts a lot on.
That's true.
I think it shows a lot for an individual to go out and get an outside coach, and I encourage it. I mean, even me personally, like I work with an executive coach because I need somebody to help hold me accountable and work on my blind spots and, you know, help me move the ball forward professionally. So, you know, 100%, even, you know, but if it's a specific coach for a specific thing and then going outside and getting specialization on that, I'm all for it.
Yeah, I think that's true. I think even more so now because, you know, when I first got into sales, I didn't really think it was going to be my career. But I love the fact that a lot of younger folks are starting a sales as a career and they want to do it forever, which is awesome. If you're taking it seriously like you should, then having a third party objective professional helping you with your blind spots, because you're right, that's career development versus your leadership is going to help you, of course, get better. But at the end of the day, once you get better to sell their products, their services, which is obviously what you should be doing. But as a human being, we all want to get better at what we do, right?
Absolutely.
Whether it's just in life or in sales and so on and so forth. What's the difference between having a coach and having a mentor? I was just thinking of that, because the other thing we talk often about is folks to find a mentor or mentors through life. Do you see a difference between the two? And if so, what do you think they are?
I do see a difference. I think they definitely fall in the same structure.
Mm-hmm.
To me, mentorship is, I think mentorship should be structured. Like
Mm-hmm.
you should, if you have mentors, they should know that they're your mentors. It should be organized, et cetera. But they're really, I mean, it's just mentoring. Coaching is.
Would you pay for a mentor? I don't think so. No.
I think to answer, give the quick answer. I think you pay for a coach.
You pay for a coach. You don't pay for a mentor.
You don't pay for a mentor. Yeah. That's what I think the key difference is.
I'd stay away from mentors looking for payment.
Yeah, exactly.
Let's move on to another topic, which is win rates. I always firmly believe that the most important thing in sales to focus on from a KPI standpoint is win rates. Because at the end of the day, if you're not closing deals, but closing deals at a high percentage or the highest percentage you can, what difference does all the other metrics mean? So what are some of the things you've done in your career to help focus increase win rates?
Okay, so if I had to land, I get asked this question a lot, like, hey, what is the key metric that really matters besides closed won deals, right? That's the outcome. But if you really want to look at the number one leading indicator, it's meetings. So, and having effective meetings. So, and really within the meeting, that's where win rates happen. So, kind of back to the coaching thing, the number one thing that I would always drive to coach on would be the effectiveness of that meeting, whether it was a salesperson on the phone with a prospect, doing, discovery. You're more later, you're further in stage, you got more people on the phone or in the room, and it's just effectiveness of that meeting because that's the number one thing that they can control.
Yes.
So I'm just a big believer that, hey, number one metric, leading indicator.
And the hardest thing to do is to get a meeting. So once you get the meeting, man, do the most you can with that meeting. The thing I'd add to what you said about the meetings, 100% agree with you about meetings being extremely important KPI. One, honestly, I only look at a couple metrics. That's one of the three that I look at. The second thing with a meeting to me is what was the outcome, right? And what was the stated next step, right? For example, salesperson has a meeting. Hey, had a meeting. It's great. Loved me. It's an awesome meeting. Everybody was happy. But what was the outcome? Oh, well, we ran out of time. We didn't really get to talk about next steps or get feedback. So, so what was the sense of having the meeting if you didn't have an agenda with an associated outcome to that? What are you trying to get out of this? And then most importantly, a next step. To me, it's like if you didn't leave a minute or two or three, whatever it takes at the end to gather some feedback and get the next step, well, how do we really know how the meeting went other than reading the room, of course, right? So.
Yes, so I would agree that the outcome and the next step, even if it's a no.
So I assume when you were teaching,
no is the right thing.
You're providing a structure of here's what an efficient meeting, here's what a real well-run meeting looks like, right?
Yes. So a couple things, and I don't want to get too in the weeds.
Why not?
But number one, so if I was coaching to this, there's a couple key things that I like to bring up. So number one, always have an agenda. Mm-hmm. So, and I mean, I've seen this. I've seen the win rates increase when you have an agenda, even if you're on Zoom, a visual one.
Yeah, but Brian, it was just, a casual meeting. Why do I need an agenda, right?
Well, this is my opinion. I don't know if it's science, but
by the way, that wasn't my voice. That was me pretending to do it.
Okay. Most human beings want the comfort of knowing what's going on. Mm-hmm. So even your prospect on the other end of the line, it shows that you respect their time,
right,
and that you value their time, just by showing like, hey, here's our plan today. I came prepared. Yeah. I came prepared with a structure for our meeting, and 99.9% of the time, that helps with their engagement. They're going to flip their camera on. They're going to say, "Oh, hey, Brian prepared for this."
Well, it's also just sets what's the intention? Like, what do you want from me today, right? I know you're a salesperson, and I know you want to sell me this thing, but what is intention? And I'll give you an example to what you're saying. Like, let's say you're doing your job, and you just, I want to catch up with John just to prepare for the next Tuesday's meeting. Hey, John, it's Vince, right? I'm just quick call. Want to get ready for next Tuesday. So it's not like, here's my agenda. It's, you can work in what your intention of the meeting is as an agenda in a very casual way when it's a casual meeting. That's my point about pretending I was a salesperson before, is that, yeah, you can work it in. It's called having a conversation, but the other person on the side of the conversation would like to know, well, why are you calling and what's this about? So they can kind of think and be prepared as you ask them questions, or at least know what we're after on this call that you called, or email, or whatever it might be, right?
Yes.
Am I getting too much in the weeds now?
No, that's perfect. Yeah, so the agenda is important because it level sets, it shows that you're prepared, and the person on the other end of the agenda,
right,
or the group, it's appreciated.
Right.
So last thing on the agenda, what I found is always when you're beginning of the meeting, you're setting it up, always position and bundle in, hey, I'd like to have 5 minutes just at the end of this. I'm going to recap our discussion.
Right.
And then I want to talk. I want to talk you through and get your feedback on next steps. So you're on the agenda. You're setting yourself up to get, an outcome. Even if that outcome is no, at least then you're going to have it. And a no is better than a maybe.
And folks out there, again, like, the meeting's going well, conversation is great, it's good back and forth, and you're like, you know what? I'm not going to save any time at the end because it's going so well. I don't want to cut it off. I'd say, no, that's a bad idea, because it's like a great comedian. You want to leave the show on a high note, because as you continue on, it's going to go down, but you missed the point of your agenda of the meeting is, we've done all we came to do. Now it's time to wrap. Now it's time to get feedback. Now it's time to get next steps. Because if you just let those things go by because you feel that the meeting's just going so great and you didn't want to interrupt it, then you kind of didn't hold up to your promise of what you started the conversation with, and hold everybody accountable for the meeting. So I'll put it out there. I get why you wouldn't want to stop it, but it takes a little bit of discipline and understanding that in the long run, it's the better thing to do, right?
Yeah. So for a keep it simple approach, the agenda matters
big time.
So kind of going through the agenda, typically, I mean, I'm talking about just sales meetings in general with prospects, or it could be a client if you have something to talk about.
Yep.
The next fundamental thing is, and you can put this on your agenda, that you want to keep it about them. And you can even call out and just say, hey, I'd like to hey, we're going to do some quick introductions if it's the first time, or if there's new people in the room. But I'd like to talk about, your process or what you're struggling with here.
Yep.
Really the reason that you're there is to help them solve something or help them with a pain.
Yep.
So just by positioning that, like, really what you want is you want them talking about this problem, about this pain, and then you want them talking 80% of the time versus us telling them how wonderful and great we are and how many millions of users or whatever the things are that we have. So I always put that in the agenda. Like, the meat of our conversation is going to be about you
and solving your problems. Yes. Important.
And then I'll even put in the agenda, like, hey, I will talk about my business or my company, but I want to understand your business first.
So going back to why we started this conversation at meetings, because it's a very important metric to measure for success. I don't want to put you on the spot, but like the salespeople that you managed that was it the volume of meetings or the quality of the meetings or both that led to more wins?
It's both. It's both. I mean, I say the easiest path, depending on the size of company you're in, the amount of marketing, lead gen support you have, really the quality of meeting is really where the rubber hits the road. Because just based on time and the resources that you have as a salesperson, I think you mentioned this before. I mean, that meeting, that's gold. Just getting that meeting alone is massive.
Right.
Especially if you're in a startup or a smaller business. And so just putting focus in there and upping the win rate. I mean, hey, if you have 5 meetings in a month and you won 80% of them, that's all good. But if it's, I'd say when things get more transactional, the volume of course matters.
Yes.
But I think it has dependencies on size of business, your size of quota.
I guarantee you talk to any transactional rep that's doing a ton of meetings on a daily basis, they would sacrifice a number of those to get you just the high scored leads that have coming inbound, right? Like for the transactional game, right? Yes, volume matters, but quality. And then for enterprise, gosh, getting an enterprise level meeting and everybody show up is like, thank God. And so taking advantage of that is huge. To me, I track the number of meetings, of course, reps, but I tracked also the meeting to the outcome of the next step as well, right? And how good that actual meeting went as well. And then from that to net new opportunities created, of course. So it's meetings to net new opportunities closed. Really, those are the 3 biggest metrics for me.
And that, I'd say that is the equation.
Yeah.
That is the equation for 90% of businesses. I mean, some of them are trying to get to that. Yeah. But that's the equation. That gives your leadership predictability. Yeah. You're driving predictable revenue. Yeah. At the top level, that's really what we're after.
And doesn't it scare you as a leader when, forget about summer months or high vacation, or if you have peaks in your selling motion, but like when I see a huge drop off in meetings from week to week or month or quarter to quarter, that's the thing that scares me the most, because that's the biggest leading indicator of, am I going to have net new opportunities or more opportunities, right?
Right.
And it's like, and again, the hardest thing to do is start the conversation, get a commitment to schedule the meeting, and then have them attend the meeting, right? Once that happens, you're pretty much going to know from there if it's a fit or not a fit, or an opportunity or not an opportunity. But getting that first one is really the gold.
Yes.
Right?
Yes. I mean, solving the solving to the top of funnel.
Yep.
I mean, from my experience, that's where I've seen, and for the growth businesses I've been a part of.
Yep.
Once we solved that, that's when everything else got predictable. Yep. So I would fully agree with that.
Well, I think we really got into that, probably a level of granularity. Some people are like, geez, that was deep, but hopefully that was helpful for folks out there listening. We're going to take some audience questions, and then I have one wrap-up question before we leave. If you want to ask a question, Linda, please just take that mic and hit the on switch so we can get it recorded, hear your lovely voice. right there. See where's, no,
On the
no,
towel.
right there. And there's a little on-off switch.
So this thing's on?
If it's switched up,
Yes.
there it is. You're good.
Sorry, I missed the beginning, but you just used an expression, top of muddle?
Top of funnel.
Funnel.
I like muddle better. What is muddle?
So Vince, you were just saying about the KPI, about being the number of meetings, but
Mhm.
wouldn't you say that's because you have a pretty good fix on making sure your meetings are quality and that your team has quality meetings?
I think the number of meeting is relevant to the type of business or sales motion you have, right? Transactional versus mid-market versus enterprise, right? So I think the volume is very relevant and important, but quality is way more important. Meaning, like, I've seen marketing departments do little tricks to get the number of meetings up, like giving away headphones or a gift card or whatever. And I don't have anything against those, but I will say the quality of those meetings are lacking. So I'm not a big fan of those. I'd rather have my volume be down a little bit, but the quality be up, right? That's the most important thing to me.
So for people who are afraid of sales, like, I'm not good at sales, but I'm really good at selling to salespeople.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know why that is.
Are you in psychology? You're a psychology major?
Yeah.
Because salespeople are easy to sell to. They want to buy. You give them a reason, if you understand what their pain is, and you give them a reason, like, God, they won't argue with you, right? They're like, hey, that sounds reasonable. I think that's part of it.
Great. Thank
Does anyone else have a question? Thank you, Linda.
Hey, this is Connor Hoyt here. Ryan and Vince, we're both speaking about coaching, which I think is a really hot topic, especially nowadays on LinkedIn. There's a lot of gurus coming out. There's, I was successful here, buy my course. If you were, earlier in your career, at this point today, how would you siphon out what a good trainer, mentor, bundle of courses, sales courses to buy is?
That's a good one.
That's a good question. So I've got an opinion. It's to be a little bit strong. So I would agree. There is the sales enablement coaching world is just massive right now. And
Yeah.
LinkedIn is a big part of that.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a lot of what is on LinkedIn are people that have, structured coaching programs and playbooks, et cetera, et cetera. And it's just so much dopamine coming at you that it's very hard to decipher that out when you're looking for the best coach for you. So things that I look for, I do want to understand who the individual is and what their experience is. And typically I would shy away from, for me, if I'm going to pay a coach, I want to understand that they've been doing this for a while. They've got some scars, like they've done the thing. And, I'm going to have their availability. So the things I'm not knocking on, the franchise model of coaching. I think those
One
work
size
great.
fits all type of coach.
One size fits all, but it really kind of comes down to the individual coach.
Yeah.
And what their IP is or their intellectual property. And so for me, like when I looked for my executive coach, it was very specific on, what I was after.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it was a sales process for me to go find a coach.
Yeah.
But those are the things that I look for.
I think I add on to that. I think what you hit on is like, it's got to be a personal experience, meaning if you're looking for a one-on-one coach, as opposed to just a program, which was lots of those too, nothing wrong with them, find a coach that you aspire to. So if you want to be an enterprise level seller, find a coach or a program that's specifically around enterprise sales where you want to go. The easiest way to get started, honestly, Connor, is read a couple of books. Sales hasn't changed in a lot of years. How we sell, the channels we sell in has changed, but like sales fundamentally hasn't changed. So I start with books first and go from there. And I think the best way to figure out which coaches or books to start with is, I preach all the time, is your network. Ask your friends, colleagues, peers, people you respect. Hey, what's a book that you would read if you were trying to go in here, or who's the person I should speak to if I wanted a coach, and that sort of thing. I think that's always what I rely on is network first and then go from there.
The other thing I'll add too, before you start really investing in all that, I recommend just any individual take some kind of a personality profile, like take a DISC assessment, take a Myers-Briggs, because those things don't lie.
That's true.
And you really kind of knowing thyself going into a coaching experience it is much better. And the coach you get paired with, they should care about that too, because you can be upfront with them and say, hey, these are the things I'm looking at. Not even if it's a personality thing, it's just, hey, I want to grow the skill set, but this is my personality. Yeah. So
that's a good
here are
point.
my weaknesses, here are my strengths.
We're actually having a master class on that in July, by the way. So last question for you, Bryan. I don't want to put you on the spot, because I usually end on this. What is one interesting thing about Bryan that most people don't know?
I'm just not that interesting. So
it's gotta be one thing.
Yeah, I interesting thing about me, I just did some odd jobs when I was in college and that time. So
you were a hitman.
No, nothing that cool. Nothing that cool.
That cool. Oh my gosh.
So I'd say one of the most interesting things is I did, one summer I went up to Alaska and did a fishing charter. So I lived on a salmon boat for like a month and a half. I like to preface it. It was not like Deadliest Catch. Like it was not that. There was not waves coming over us and all that. How
old were you?
I was 20.
Okay.
20. So, but it was a really good experience, and
it made you. I bet you decided you didn't want to be a fisherman.
No, it was really like camping on a boat in the middle of nowhere. For a month and a half. So
with a bunch of guys.
It's why I don't camp now. Honestly.
You can leave it at that. Hey, Bryan, thanks for coming on.
Absolutely.
Appreciate you being a guest, and everybody out there, have a great day. Till next time.
Thanks. Appreciate it.